Welcome back, CSE 230, to part 3 of our Wells lawn care design that we're working on, and we're making this mobile, so technically this is EX17, but we're still working in our EX16 folder, and so far we just worked on the header, so now we're going to work on the nav section, and we may have to do some renaming here. So remember, the nav section, or I shouldn't say section because we have a section, but the nav element is really this bar in here that contains this unordered list and these line items in here. So the nav is the enclosing area, and then we actually have an unordered list, and then we have line items in there. And if you're not sure, go back and look at your index and see what you have there. Now here's nav class. We gave it a class name of nav, and we styled it that way. We should have styled nav. It has a background of that dark green, it has some padding in it. It's text aligned right so that all the buttons move to the right. So that's our nav. And then we even targeted things inside the nav, like the line items. We didn't actually target the entire list, but we targeted the line items. So what we're going to do is just maybe change the names a little bit before we do anything else, because we're going to have to do that. So I'm going to go back up here, and the UL, we'll give it a class name. UL class equals, and we'll just call it menu, because that's really what the unordered list is, the menus. Give that a class name. Actually, we'll give it an ID name of menu, because I don't think we're going to style it, but we may have to contact it through JavaScript. So we'll give an ID name of menu, because there's only one menu. Remember, for multiple things you could use classes. For single ones, and especially for JavaScript, you're better off with IDs. And then for these things, we could give these things li class names of, we'll call them menu item. Now I know that's longer, but menu item, but that way it's descriptive and we know what it is. And it's not that hard to go in here and copy this and basically just paste it. Notice when I copy the space, so that when I paste it, the space is already there. So they're all menu items, and that's menu. So just to make sure that everything's lined up with our CSS, before we even do anything with our query, let's go in here, and we have nav li. Well, we've now changed that. We've now changed our li. Now you could still use li, but we now have a class name. So let's use the class name. Let's use the class name of menu item. So that would be, instead of li, that would be dot menu item. Okay, that'll be more specific. So that should still work, and you can test it out and make sure it still works. Make sure they're relinking. And we're not doing anything with the ID of UL yet, because I don't think we have any styles that target UL, at least so far. So that's okay. So we now have these menu item class names, and the reason we're going to do that is because we're also going to have our hamburger menu in there. So let's just go back and make sure it works, refresh it, make sure nothing's changed, and nothing's changed. So we want this to disappear, but then we want a hamburger menu to appear. So how do we do that? Well, we're going to have to add hamburger menu to this, and that's going to have a different class name, and then it won't appear, and then in our query it will appear. So we could just do this. Now I just want to show you something. In our query, if we go back up, get our style, menu items. Now we don't want them to appear. So I'm going to go down here, and I'm going to paste nav menu item, the menu items inside nav. And remember, you don't need nav, but the only things that are going to change here necessarily are the font's not going to change, the weight's not going to change, font size isn't going to change, margin left, that might change. We may not need that, because remember that was used to deal with the spaces in between. So let me just put that in there. Background, I don't think that's going to change. Display inline block, that is going to change, because they're going to display as blocks. So let's change this to block. And then the display is actually going to be none. And actually, this won't display block until we use the JavaScript. So right now, let's just say we want it to display none. We want it to just hide. And everything else could probably just disappear. For now. So let's do that, and let's make sure we have our closing curly brace there. Make sure, and even if you have to scroll down, make sure you don't have one down further, but it won't go past the numbers. So that's our closing for that. So that looks okay. That's what this looks like for now. So let's just see what happens. It should disappear when we get to 750. And it does. Now the whole nav thing disappears, so we're going to have to fix that, because we don't want our entire nav to disappear, because if there's nothing inside the nav, it all disappears. But we are going to have a hamburger menu inside there. So let's let's put our hamburger menu inside there. So we're going to go back to our index HTML, and we'll make another line item, and we'll give it a class of, I'll call it ham item, just to be consistent here. This will be ham item, just because I'm calling them items, so I'll call it ham item. And what's going to be in here isn't going to be an image, so I won't have contact us, I'll have an image. So I'll just put in image, and I'll put tab, and remember image source src, and then in here is going to be img, which is the folder name / and then it's going to be ham.ping and .pmg. Those are the little things that mess you up. One little misspelling and you're messed up and you don't know what's going on. So let's just make sure it's ham.png. Ham.png, it's in the img folder, and that's good. And you just put ham icon, hamburger icon, whatever. Okay, now this isn't going to show up to start. So that's not going to show up to start. So to start, then we'd go to our regular styles, and we don't have one here yet. So go back to our regular styles, and here's the menu items. I'm going to go here and put nav space and then ham item, and we'll put display, and we'll put inline block, because I think that's what it's supposed to be. Or actually none. It's going to be none to start. None to start. Alright, so we're not going to see that, but it will still be there. So let's see what happens. I don't know if that's going to affect it or not. Again, I haven't done this from scratch in a while, so let's see what happens when we resize. Okay, it still doesn't show anything there because we don't make it appear. It's still none, but let's make it appear on the resize. So let's take this and copy it and go down into our media now and make it appear. Because remember, what's happening here when you resize is this is disappearing, and now we want this to appear. We want nav ham item to appear. So I'll put inline block and see how that works. And again, I'm not cheating and looking at my other stuff, trying to do this by just thinking it through. So let's see how this works. Let's refresh. Okay, that's actually what we want. Might want a little padding on the top and bottom of that. So visually, that's kind of what we want without any JavaScript or anything. Now, I want a little padding on that to push it up a little. So what I'll do is put padding, and top and bottom, I'll just do like 4 pixels, and then 0 pixels, nothing on the right and left. And again, you could just put 0 there, and we'll see what happens. We'll refresh that, and it probably needs a little more on the top, believe it or not. But for now, I think that's okay. Unless you want to go trouble again. Remember at the top, maybe we'll go 6, and then right will be 0, and then the bottom might be 2 or something, and then the left will be 0. So that's using the trouble, top, right, bottom. So this is the top, bottom. This is the T and the B, trouble. So let's see what that looks like when I move it over. Might look a little better. That looks a little better. So that's fine. That'll work for what we're doing visually. And again, we still need to do the JavaScript to make the other stuff appear. And I'll probably keep the JavaScript to last. So what we could do next is deal with these things disappearing, dealing with this whole section area. Now again, we're only dealing with a part of a page. Obviously we don't have footers, we don't have other sections or anything. We're just trying to work through this kind of in a simple kind of way. But our top is working visually. So in a mobile layout, this is what we want. Now we don't have anything active yet displaying our buttons, and we need to do this. So in part 4, we're going to deal with our section area. So just to review here, part 1 was the overview, part 2 was the header, part 3 was the nav area, just the visual parts of it, and then part 4 will be the middle section here. We'll get this formatted properly. We'll make sure the images don't display, they disappear, and then for the last part, hopefully, we'll work on the JavaScript to make this thing appear. We've already done something like that in EX11, I believe, but this might be a little bit different and a little bit of a refresher for that. So Stay tuned for part 4.